Héctor Armienta. I'm the Artistic Director of Opera Cultura, and welcome to Los Revolucionarios, a program devoted to the work of Latinx artists changing the face of opera on and off stage. And I am extremely excited that Mezzo Soprano star and legend Suzanna Guzman has consented to do this interview with me. So welcome, Suzanna.
Hi, Hector. I'm so happy to be with you. I am in Sacramento right now in a green room of the B Street Theater. So if someone walks in, don't worry about it. They're theater people.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks for letting us know. So Suzanna and I have worked in the past before, but we'll talk about that later. But quickly, Suzanna, just a few things I want to mention right off the bat. Suzanna was just recently named one of the 5 Hispanic legends of opera by Los Angeles Opera. She's also known really extremely well for her work in developing young artists. And she's performed virtually everywhere. Just to name a few, she's performed at the Met, she's performed with Los Angeles Opera, she's performed in Europe, she's performed with the Kennedy Center, and the list goes on and on and on. So she is truly a legend, and I'm so pleased that she can join us.
I am so happy to be here. I love Hispanic Heritage Month because I think we get to see each other during that time, right, Hector?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to be, well, it's getting to be more. I mean, they're doing, the opera companies are starting to produce more work around sort of the Latinx experience. So I'm very excited about that. So, Suzanna, tell us a little bit of how you started in opera.
It was a complete accident. I'll tell you very quickly. I wanted to be a rock and roll star, and I was touring with a band called Apricot Brandy. And we were going all through the Pacific Northwest, and I lost my voice. And my friend, Alba Quesada, said, you need a teacher. And so the teacher gave me an aria. She gave me Habanera from Carmen and said, let's work on this for a couple of weeks. And then I sang for a man whose name was Dr. Van Grove. And I thought he was going to say, your voice is fine. You can go back to the band now. Just do this song every day. Instead, he said, you are cast. I said, excuse me? And he said, you're cast. I would like you to sing Carmen. And I said, I'm sorry, what is that? And it turns out, I said, what kind of doctor are you? And he said, I'm a doctor of music. This is an audition. I would like you to sing the role of Carmen in my upcoming production of Carmen. That's how I learned about opera. And luckily, she's Latina. Luckily, she speaks French. And she's full of passion and fire. It's incredible, known music. And that was my first introduction to opera, singing the title role of opera for Inspiration Point Fine Arts Colony in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And it was the first of like 300 performances of Carmen that I did.
Yeah, I know that was very much one of your signature roles and that you performed everywhere. And anytime I mention your name to everybody, anyone, they know you for that role. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the work that you've done in singing new work. But yeah, I know you've really, when I think about that time, I didn't know you at that time, but you were really one of the trailblazers in terms of opening doors for others, Latina singers, as well as, sort of the Latinx community. So tell us a little bit about how that's translated into your passion now in terms of promoting and developing young artists.
The very first show I ever did was called, that I got my equity card in many decades ago. I won't tell you how many, but many. It was called Se Necesita Costureras con Experiencia, and it starred Carmen Zapata. And what was so wonderful about the Bilingual Foundation of the Arts is that they took a chance, but they were very firm with us and said, you need to be professional. And they told me what professional was. So in essence, that was my conservatory. And what happened is, by knowing that mentors can change a person's life, I was scared for 20 years. I sang my first coloratura role next to Marilyn Horne. And I sang an aria right next to her. and I didn't even know what coloratura was. I did my debut at the Metropolitan Opera with Franco Zeffirelli, and I could not read music. I did a brand new production where my co-star was Plácido Domingo, and we sang for the Queen of Spain, and I was scared for 20 years. So for me, to be able to tell a young singer before they're my age, before they get older, here's what will help you. If you want this business, if you have a passion for music, for creativity, this is where you can go. These are the steps you can take. And my passion for helping young singers also extended to helping them pay for college. So I worked very closely with the Hispanic Scholarship Foundation to find scholarships that could help students pursue their dreams in an area, a conservatory-like atmosphere. So that for me is my favorite thing to do, is to say, I think USC would be great for you. I think you would do really great in Chicago. And to be able to connect them with a good teacher and good scholarships, and to see if it is the life they want.
And you've been very, you're very generous of spirit also, because I know that when Opera Cultura has been looking to cast other singers, you always send me an email with recommendations. So, your voice is so important in the Latinx opera community, but also, it's really important, to sort of to be able to promote the work of, sort of the next generation of artists. And, sort of going back to one of the reasons that, I wanted to interview you is because you are such, I think of you as a legend, but I think it's also important for others to know the important work that you've done like this. But why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the great experiences you've had with other, you've named a couple of singers, but why don't you talk a little bit about some of the composers that you've actually worked with?
Oh my God! Well, there's so many. For example, of course, Daniel Catan wrote Florencia in El Amazonas for me in the role of Paula, and that's making its Metropolitan Opera debut this year on November 15th. That is amazing. I also, it is so interesting that it seems that opera has a lot of operas that are based in Spain. So I spent, even when I'm not singing in Spanish, I spent so much time in Spain singing Barbiere di Siviglia, doing Carmen, also from Seville, Nozze di Figaro, playing Anina, the Italian spy with a little Spanish flair. So I've spent a lot of my career doing things in Spanish, but a couple of the greatest experiences were, of course, playing Ultima by a young, wonderful composer named Hector Armienta, where I got to be someone who was gently guiding a young mind with exquisite music. The song to sing in English. I wasn't raised speaking Spanish, but Spanglish. So to sing the role of Ultima and to be able to use my guidance the way the women in my family have guided me generation upon generation was an amazing experience. And also another opera that I just did, which got a lot of notoriety, was Hopscotch by the Industry Opera, where I played the role of older Lucha. There were 8 Luchas in this production, and my scene was in a telephone, in a limousine, speaking to my younger self in another limousine, and being able to tell her, life is hard, but I promise you, you will make it through. And I think that is my goal in my personal life, to remind us that every step of our journey, there are endless possibilities that are full of hope and that can lead to great joy and happiness. Wow. Mentoring younger students also, I just want to say this, the younger world needs mentoring. But Hector, people our age, people my age, still have music in them. One of my greatest joys is that Ultima was a woman my age. To be able to let that music out. Nick Benavides, also who you introduced me to and who I got cast in his current production because of Ultima. It's called Caravana de Mujeres. It's in English. It's about Colombian women who go to Spain looking for husbands who are my age. It is awesome. And there are so many people, so many singers who were amazing Juliettes, who were amazing Marguerites, and they still have music within them, but they don't know how to make that cross over to the next phase. So I'm very interested in helping our colleagues who want to get those last bits of music out.
Yeah. Well, it was very nice of you to say what you said about Bless Me Ultima, but it's interesting because when I worked with Mr. Anaya, because we had already, I already had known you, and in fact, yeah, that's right, you came out to visit with him.
I did.
That's right, you did.
Remember his dachshunds?
Yes,
Do you
yes.
remember he offered us tequila or red wine at 11 o'clock in the morning?
I okay, now the secret's out. But
Oh,
okay, but
he
getting
was
back to what
amazing.
you said,
It was
that
amazing.
experience.
That was
But
a life experience. That was a golden moment, Hector.
yeah, it was. But I wanted to say that that because and you and I are both from LA, we're both from LA. But you come when you do those kinds of roles, what's so exciting is because you come from an authentic experience. You know what that is. You know sort of how we sort of many times go from English to Spanish, and you know about La Cultura and all those things. And so, and I really think it's been a long time coming. I'm seeing more opera companies producing work, that touches on the Latinx cultural experience. But one question, and I we're going longer than I said we would, but one question I want to ask you, that sort of comes up, or I've been thinking about, is that idea of casting, right? And so I think, how do you, or what's your advice, or what are your thoughts about, you know, only Latinx artists singing Latinx repertoire? And what is sort of the ramifications of that when then we want our artists, our community, to perform roles that have nothing to do with, Latinx, Hispanic culture? What are your thoughts around that?
That is a really excellent, excellent question, because that is so difficult right now. The awakening of the correct demographic in our art form is very powerful, and actually it's very just. My career, one of the biggest roles besides Carmen was I played Suzuki. I played Lady Tiang, Bloody Mary. And those were my calling cards. I also did a lot of Sound of Musics, and I'm very blessed to know that the Mother Abbess's real name was Virgilia. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But there was a part of me that was a little bit resentful about the fact that I had the passion, I had the notes, and I love the Butterfly. Doing Suzuki was the only role that Puccini really wrote that I felt had an amazing characterization for a singer. But then I saw a production of The King and I, which I did that show with Yul Brynner. And I love that show with all my heart. I had many productions of that, but I didn't even get called in for that because they called in a young Pacific Islander woman who sang this role. But you know what, Hector? She spoke Thai to the ladies, the other wives, and the enriching of the story was beyond belief. It was the best thing I have ever seen. And I realize there is something that the culture that one is raised with and comes from can inform so much the character you're playing. I was able to sing right after the pandemic in the Heights, and I did Abuela Claudia. Now, I'm not from Cuba, but there's something about me and my knowledge of abuelas, because I have two, that I believe was able to impart something wonderful. What I say for all the people who say, but I have a Carmen in me and I'm not Latina, I think it's okay. What if you are a Carmen with Irish roots? What if you are a Carmen who is in a high school and you are full of fire and passion? There are certain ways to get around it, and it's up to us to change the minds of people about the appropriateness that we have for roles. That's how I feel. I am finding that more and more I live in the Latino world. I'm blessed that opera has such a huge, like I said, Seville, right? But there are so many amazing roles that people are writing right now for speakers of Spanish, for the beautiful Cruzar la Cara de la Luna. I got to sing that with Mariachi Vargas.
Oh,
Can you believe it?
production. Where was that?
It was at the Soraya. Dan Guerrero directed it.
Okay, okay. Wow.
It was awesome. And Daniel Rodriguez, the New York police officer who became known for singing the national anthem at all the 9/11 services, he was the star. It was a beautiful production and it was in Spanish. And there's something so exquisite about telling this story in the United States. So I think we have great stories, and I think we have classical great stories. But check it out. You just wrote a beautiful Zorro, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It is. Do you know who I think just kicked butt? And that was Catherine Zeta-Jones in the movie.
Yeah.
She was one hot Latina,
Yeah.
and she's not Latina, but she convinced the directors that she could do that, and it worked.
Oh, I was, I want to ask you one last question in closing, but I was asked by an opera company because they're getting ready to produce it, that they asked me about the roles of Zorro, and it was a really, and in terms of the casting, the composers, they don't have any say about who gets cast, but they did ask me, and it was interesting. I had to really think about that, but the last question I want to ask you, so what advice would you have for sort of the next generation of singers, given all your experience and the challenges and where we are today?
The biggest advice that I have for anybody is something that I have just discovered for myself as we get older. There are pieces of music that are in the meat of our voice that we sing in the shower, and it changes and rewires the way we feel. There are songs that touch people because we love them. In opera, we need to find the repertoire that just makes our entire being sing, and then practice, 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 so that if you have a touch of jet lag, so that if you don't sleep, so that if your beloved family is in the audience and you want to do a great job for them, practice. That is my number one piece of advice. Don't let money freak you out about going to school. Go to school. It's the best concentration that you'll get of coaching, of learning vocal technique, of stagecraft, and to be certain that you don't choose a school simply for its prestige. If you have a chance to go to Juilliard, but you're accepted at a school like Michigan or UC Irvine or NYU, and the teacher, or a Florida, Texas school, California, UC, the teachers love you and feel they can work with you. Go with the people who believe in you and hold them all close to your heart, because it's a hard business and you're going to need someone to tell you you're perfect, you're okay, you sound better than ever. Let's go have a shot of tequila.
Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. Suzanna, I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for this program. And I just wish you all the best as always. And I look forward to seeing you in your next production. So thank you.
I look forward to seeing you in yours. I cannot wait for Zorro to come out. I'll be in the audience just cheering you on.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Felicidades. Bye-bye.